Signals that matter most for me, again, I've talked about, okay, cool. Are there competitors? And are those competitors doing well? A lot of people, when I ask them, hey, like, who's also kind of building the same kind of things? They're like, oh, no one. Like, I'm the only one building something. And I'm like, that's kind of a red flag.
Have you found any like ways for AI to kind of help you in the process of either like forming the idea and then like validating it prior to building, and
Mhm.
then after building and launching, actually compiling this data and trying to get like some useful insights out of it? Have you found AI useful for that, or is it still a manual kind of thing?
Yeah, I think,
Lots.
yeah,
You built a couple apps,
yeah.
one or two, three, four, five, maybe like a few. Now, you're not technical. I know that because I'm the technical one. I'm the one that's coding. How do you go about testing all these different app ideas that you have without coding anything first? Like what's kind of your methodology? Because I mean, obviously the obvious answer is you get a contractor, but now you're wasting a bunch of money just building apps that may or may not work. So what's your like frame of mind when you're looking and exploring these?
Yeah, so essentially I'm a thief. That's that's what I do. So I have zero original ideas, and what I do is I tend to look, let's say, on the App Store and being able to look at what companies are currently doing well. So I normally like I look at, like, let's say, the top 20 or top 30 apps in each category. What you tend to see is, like, if you see multiple apps doing basically the exact same thing, but they're all squashed up together in the top 30 apps, top 50 apps in that specific thing, that probably means that they're printing money. So that's kind of like my first thing. Then I go to something called Sensor Tower. Sensor Tower is like a place, it's free, and it basically gives like a rough idea on how much that company is actually earning, or that app is actually earning on a monthly basis. And I look for, like, my sweet spot is if they're making 100K plus. Because for me, when I was building apps, I was like, yo, even if I can make 5K, bro, that's kind of like cool for me. So if I can see multiple apps doing 100K plus, there's probably a little bit of crumbs for me on that side. And what they're building isn't anything that difficult. So that's kind of like how I do validation. So some people validate by, like, creating the MVP themselves and then going out into the market. But in my head, how I think about it is kind of like, well, they've already created my MVP already. They've already spent the money to do the marketing, and now I can already see the results from them itself. So I'm like, okay, cool. This is something interesting for me to be in. I don't copy them like bar for bar itself. It's something where, for example, let's use ProScreen, right? So ProScreen, I saw loads of apps like Opal, I think is the biggest one. I think they did like 5 or 10 million ARR. So I was like, okay, cool. That's kind of interesting, but they seem kind of like complicated. It seems, they're really well thought out. Then I saw something called OneSec, and I used it once because I was supposed to test it out. It literally, well, at least at the time, it literally blocks your apps. And then when you want to open the app, it doesn't even stop you. It just says breathe for like 3 seconds. And then that's it. Then it opens the app. And I was just like, what the fuck? Then I then checked in the App Store how much they were making. I think it was like either 100K or 400K a month. I can't remember somewhere in between. But again, like I said before, 100K is kind of my minimum. And I was like, okay, cool. And that's another one called ScreenZen, again, making the same amount of money. And I was just like, this can't be that hard to do. And I think I remember when we were Founders Inc. And then I think I pitched you on that. I was just kind of like, yeah, why don't we just make an app like that blocks? Well, why don't we make an app that blocks apps? But you got to pray to unlock them. Let's just see how that goes. So that's kind of it. What were actually your thoughts when you first heard it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I had come to this realization before, not with apps, but it's the same thought process with it, where I remember being in university and I was, I was coding all the time. I was building a bunch of tools, but what I noticed was I was building tools for developers,
Mm.
which listen, there's 1,000 things we could say about that. That's a really hard business to be in. Um, but I was doing it because it was like what I was doing every day, right? So like it kind of just came second nature. But I had this realization one day, and it's stupid in retrospect, right? You're like, man, how was I that dumb that it took me this long to realize it? But I realized that I could be building tech crossed over with something else. So I could do tech and finance, tech and health, or whatever. And that is actually the sweet spot for building an app. You could build something just in health, just in finance, or just in tech, but that combination of the two is where things really start taking off. So when you pitched me this, like, Opal screen time app, prayer religious app, I saw that same cross happen. I remember like visualizing this, like the two ends meeting. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is definitely a sweet spot. And then obviously you had the experience being in the religious category before building apps for it. Already I had faith, for lack of a better word. I had faith that like you kind of already knew the market for that. And yeah, it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, it's also a very low paying app to build, right? Like it wasn't like it was going to take us 3 months to build it.
Yeah.
I think we had it done in like 3 weeks or something, an initial version, and then obviously you tweak it, right? But so I think at the time, that crossover made sense to me a lot, which was really, really valuable, I think.
Yeah. And I think also when it comes to, I guess, validating, it is good to still use the words, take inspiration from other apps, but also bringing it into an audience that well, at least this is my strategy. It's like an audience that I know well, just because as time goes on, like the tech is not the most important thing, especially when it comes to consumer mobile apps, and people can use the vibe code and kind of create things super quickly. Now it's all about the distribution side of things. So I'm looking at, okay, do they really do UGC? Like, is there a UGC angle to this? And then we can then do some marketing around that itself. So that's kind of like a key thing for me. And I think even like signals that matter most for me, again, I've talked about, okay, cool. Are there competitors? And are those competitors doing well? A lot of people, when I ask them, hey, like, who's also kind of building the same kind of things? They're like, oh, no one. Like, I'm the only one building something. And I'm like, that's kind of a red flag on that end. Like, how can you say you have literally zero competitors? Maybe just because, it's kind of like when you go I said when you go fishing, I've only gone fishing once.
Hey, you caught a shark though.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. So it's kind of like if you go out fishing and like there's no other fishermen anywhere, it's kind of like maybe because there's no fish at that point, and then that would then have to mean that you're all doing your own discovery itself, and that means spending money and time, and you may not get anywhere. While I'm more the fact of like, okay, cool, there's fishermen already out there. They already give you signals of where the fish are itself, and you kind of like scoot up next to them and then get maybe don't get the whole market itself, but at least you can get something like 5, 10K MRR, which then means that you can actually sell for like upwards of like 200K. For example.
I would be very curious to know your thoughts on this, because I'm kind of just thinking now through this, right? Like I'm kind of just playing through it in my mind. When you are looking at apps that are already doing well, and let's say there's like 4 or 5 heavy hitters in this category, each one's making about 100K, right? And they're relatively new. It's not like they've been there for that long.
Yeah.
Is there ever like a voice in your head that also looks at it and says, okay, these apps are making money and I can maybe like carve out my little piece, get my 10K a month or whatever and be happy. But is the complexity of trying to market to them, like that audience, going to be too difficult because these 5 apps are just dominating that? Like, is that ever a thought, or do you not really worry about that?
Yeah. I think when it comes to consumer, like, it's not a thought for me because I realize, bro, there's 8 billion people on this planet itself. And these apps, yes, they're making 100K a month, but maybe they'll have like, let's say 1 million users, like at like probably like average, let's say. And then for me, it's like, if let's say my conversion is the same and everything else is the same, they're making 100K and I'm just trying to make 10K. I'm like, okay, then I just need to get to 100K kind of like users itself. And there's just so many ways of getting there, UGC wise, ads wise. Again, of course, it depends on how much you then end up spending at the end of the day. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't think there's really much of at least maybe not anymore, a thought for me, just because I'm just like, bro, there's just so many people on planet Earth, and there's just so much that people could pay for. So something I also found is that some apps aren't even optimized properly when it comes to the onboarding. So they make 100K a month, but I'm just like, yo, we can actually make a whole lot more if we like just increase the price or show more paywalls in the onboarding itself. Just really like low hanging fruit stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So obviously, you know this, but people watching might not know. Majority of my background is actually in B2B. So I have done B2C stuff. Like I made a dating app for fun, and obviously we had Pre-Screen together. But most of my experience is in B2B. So B2B sales, B2B markets, B2B audiences. There are certain markets and audiences that you just don't touch in B2B. Like you don't go near healthcare really. You don't go near education if you're trying to sell to schools. Like that's just you're dead in the water trying to do that. Do you see any like communities or any audiences in B2C that have like a very low willingness to pay that like you wouldn't touch with a 1,000-foot pole?
I think B2C, like I didn't, there is like, for me, how I see it is like yeah, honestly, I think like anyone can get really at the end of the day. I think that the issue that I see sometimes is that people try to create apps that are two-player itself. And what I mean by that is that when people are creating apps, it's kind of like, oh, let's say it's a accountability app, I don't know, whatever, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, oh, user needs to come in, and also user also needs to get another user who's their friend also onto the app. And then they will have value itself. And it's kind of like stacking those kind of like miracles together. And then it's, people always say, oh, that's gonna be great because I'm going to invite someone else, and then they're going to invite someone else, and they'll invite someone else, and blah, blah. And it's just wishful thinking at the end of the day. And it's like 99.9% chance it just won't happen. So I'm not saying two-player apps are bad, but I'm just like, they should be a one-player version, essentially, for you to be able to do. It's kind of like gaming, right? Like I played COD quite a lot, Call of Duty quite a lot, and it's kind of like, I mean, probably like that's probably like the worst example because of Warzone. But essentially, it's like you want to have that campaign mode where it's like, hey, if I have no internet, no nothing, I can just still play the game itself and get some value of it. And hey, it's even greater if I invite someone. Cool, amazing. But something people just make it like super hard for them. So I wouldn't say there's a specific audience, but I'm just like, if you want that audience to now bring somebody else for them to be able to actually get any value from your product, then I'll say that'll be an issue.
And this is the exact same issue with all like the social networks and dating apps and everything. Like when I built a dating app in university, it was the exact same issue. It's like if you launch and you have nobody on the app and people sign up and they see there's nobody on the app, they're leaving. You lost them, right? Your retention is zero, like it's done. But if there's no people on the app, then people are not going to sign up, and people are not going to sign up. Like it's kind of like a chicken and egg. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of going in this endless loop. So yeah, I mean that is one of the reasons why like I always tell people like stay away from social stuff. But then again, I think social's kind of making a comeback. I see things working for sure, but on a much smaller scale where it's like literally you just need one other person. Like Jack Fricks, he has like his Lovely app, right? Like that is entirely social based, but you're only adding your girlfriend or boyfriend. You know what I mean? Like that's really simple.
I think somehow people have solved this is also making this pseudo multiplayer game where they use AI instead, right? So it then becomes multiplayer. So for example, Bible Buddy, it was like basically a AI therapist for Christians. And this second person is not actually a real person, it's just AI, or the Bible Buddy itself. And it still gives the same kind of multiplayer experience to the customer that you have or the user that you have itself. So I think AI has definitely helped with facilitating that kind of pseudo experience of multiplayer. So I think that's kind of interesting.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. But like, yeah, totally. It's another human now that you're speaking to. It's not, but it is. Right? Yeah. That's really cool.
And then what you actually want to do is kind of try and emulate what a human would do. So something, just like a random thing, with Bible Buddy, originally, of course, you kind of message it, then it messages you back, which is kind of like cool, but then you kind of feel like a beg after a while because it's kind of like, why am I keeping a message in first, blah, blah. So then we had a feature that we built in, which for notifications. So what we saw that a lot of apps were kind of like, at certain intervals, if you hadn't used the app, they'll be like, hey, like use us again. But of course, your friend's not going to do that. So what we did is that we set up, I think it's on day 7, day 14, day 30, and day 90. If you hadn't chatted with Bible Buddy, what it will do is that it will take the last, I think, 5 messages that you messaged Bible Buddy, so for the conversation, and then basically reprompt, and then we would then and then my buddy would then message you about the last thing you guys talked about, which is what a friend would normally do right at the end of the day. So instead of just being like, hey, we haven't chatted in a bit, it'll be like, oh, by the way, did you sort out the thing with your sister itself? And then imagine you're like, I don't know, playing chess or whatever on your phone, you get a notification come through, you're like, oh shit, actually, yeah, I did actually, and then you kind of like bring them in again, which obviously increased retention for us. So actually, for us, it actually increased retention by 35%. So essentially, 35% of users that saw that ended up actually chatting with Bible Buddy again, which is kind of like interesting. And then this is people that actually forgot about Bible Buddy because remember, at the best case scenario, it was triggered if they hadn't chatted to Bible Buddy for 7 days. So that was kind of interesting.
Man, that I think is like the easiest and best low-hanging fruit. It's just like this contextualized notification.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like the Lovely app, right? I downloaded it with my girlfriend. We were kind of playing around with it, testing it out. It's a great app. Like it's a very cute, like cool idea. But like we kind of stopped using it here and there. You know what I mean? Like kind of relatively quickly. He just sent like a notification where it was just like, hey, you haven't poked girlfriend's name in a while, or you haven't fed your pig blank, whatever. There's like an animal that you feed, or kind of hard to explain, but there's like an animal you take care of with your significant other. But like it's like he doesn't do that, and I see a lot of apps that don't do that. It'll be just like the very basic stuff, like, hey, time to check in, and it's like it feels cold now in a world where we have this opportunity to make things like hyper specific to people. That I think is like the easiest, biggest low hanging fruit. And I'm sure there's a bunch of apps that are killing it right now that are already doing that. But that I see is like, if you are building an app in 2026 that has even a hint of personalization, every notification has to be personalized. Like that, just period. It has to be.
Honestly, I think there's probably like some B2B tools now which probably help with that, kind of like AI notifications, and it's just like, hey, like we do the infrastructure and you just tell us how to prompt the notifications, and we'll just do all that kind of stuff for your users at different intervals or whatever it is, and you probably just pay them or something like that. There's probably something like that right now, to be honest.
I hope so. So we discussed a bunch of apps.
Yep.
Obviously you have done ones that have worked, you've done ones that have not worked. What were the key indicators that told you, okay, this idea is actually validated? Like, I actually feel like now I have built it. I can actually see it's working now.
Yeah. I would say so I always just focus on the onboarding. And I always tell people when they build an app, 90% of your time should be spent on the onboarding, because that's the place where that's the first impression of your app that a user will get. And you need to put a paywall in there. So that means that's the most prime time for a user to change from a free user to a paid user itself. So the stats I like to look at, number one, is not in any particular order. Actually, no, particular order. So like this one, I wouldn't say is the most important, but again, it helps, is something called completion rate. So what completion rate is when a user downloads your app for the first time, getting all the way through your onboarding and hitting the paywall, you want to see how many of them retain through that entire flow. And really and truly what you want is 90% plus, just to be like, hey, at least they finished the onboarding itself. Because if it's like 40%, you're basically cooked. Because let's assume let's say if you're paying like $1 per download itself, and you spent $100 to get 100 people to install the app, and then only essentially 40% of them, so 40 people end up finishing the onboarding, you've just really just lit money on fire at the end of the day. So that's that. And even based on that completion rate, I think we use Mixpanel for looking at each screen, was there a drop off? Right, a drop off is when a user hits the screen or doesn't actually hit a screen and then just basically either deletes the app, comes up the app, whatever it is there. And I remember two specifically that were interesting, but I think one of them was actually the most interesting one. We just asked, hey, it's a 2026. We asked gender, right? We're kind of like, okay, cool. What gender are you? Male, female, other, right? And then we had a huge drop off on that screen, and we were kind of like, wait, why? We're just asking, like, we're trying to make it more personal. Then I realized it's a Christian app, so people actually left reviews. They were like, "What the fuck is other? You're Christian." So instead of trying to like make that screen better or whatever it is, I just deleted the screen. So the user didn't have to go through it. So I think, okay, that's completion rate. Then next thing you want to look at is conversion rate. So that's actually looking like how many free users who saw your paywall actually convert to being either a paid user or at least start a free trial itself. I think the industry average right now is like 2 or 3%. So if you have 100 people install, you on a as a benchmark, you should have at least 2 or 3 of them that end up kind of like converting to being a paid user immediately. But then when it comes to free trial, I've seen like 20% free trial, and then 3 days later, then maybe 20% of them convert, and then that it essentially becomes like 4% or something like that itself. It depends on your app, and I think that's something you need to kind of like work with. I do have something which is when I speak to people and I'm telling them, hey, just test things out. And they're normally always like, oh, but what's the perfect way to do it? And I'm just like, there isn't a perfect way. Trust me, bro. But just like the first thing you want to do is get data first. And then things will kind of like work out as they are. And you can kind of see if they work for you itself. So like for us, we didn't have the best conversion for pre-screen itself. But what we found out was that our retention was outstanding itself. So then we built the business model around what our outstanding stats were. While there's some other apps that I know, there's one, I think Blake Anderson's app I think it's called Plug AI, which is kind of like a Riz kind of like thing. Bro, you literally open the app, on the splash screen, there's a paywall. Unskippable. So there's probably like, it probably has like great conversion. So that's why it's like, okay, if I have great conversion, let me just put it right at the beginning and just kind of like see what essentially happens itself. So that's all I'd say.
So now, I remember times where we were on Mixpanel downloading a bunch of data, feeding it through ChatGPT and trying to get some answers out of like what's working, what's not working. Have you found any like ways for AI to kind of help you in the process of either like forming the idea and then like validating it prior to building, and then after building and launching, actually compiling this data and trying to get like some useful insights out of it? Have you found AI useful for that, or is it still a manual kind of thing?
Yeah, I think some AI can be good at crunching numbers. What I've just found generally is just like I like to do like assumptions with AI. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. Hey, give me like a worst case, middle case, best case scenario here. If we have X amount of people coming in, and then and then basically just make up whatever the conversion rate is going to be, or based on, I think we were doing ads at a time. So I was kind of like, okay, what's like the payback period? And payback period is if you acquire a user for $1, how long does it take for you to extract $1 from that user itself? So for us, I think we're making maybe like 2-3 cents per day with ads, something like that. And if it costs us 50 cents to acquire that user, then we know it's going to take, I don't know what the math is, but like 15 days or something like that to get break even on that specific user. I think it was good for just spitballing numbers and assumptions through there. There's a friend of ours his name is Connor, and he's building something called Funnel Mob. And I think that'll be something that you'd be able to essentially query your data. So I think that'd be super cool as well.
We've kind of talked about like all the positive signals. What is like gut punch? Fuck, I made a bad app. Like, this is a horrible idea. Why did I do this? Why did I come up with this? What's like the one that just hits you like right in the stomach? What is that?
What would like, be like a signal that's like an app is terrible? I mean,
I
yeah,
I have one to kick it off. If you need some
yeah,
inspiration, no one downloads
yeah. That's what I was about to say. Yeah. Like, yeah. So, yeah, that's like, yeah, if no one downloads it, it's kind of like that tells you the idea sucks itself. Or maybe the way you're marketing the idea kind of like sucks. And so people don't feel like they need to download it. I think another way, even earlier than that, is like if your UGC content that you're doing is not getting any views, like at all, and you've tried multiple different hooks itself. It just could be like people just don't care about what you're doing. And a lot of people try to say, oh, because there's another app in the space. It's like, nah, it's just like your idea is just kind of like terrible. I think if we look further downstream and we look at like just apps that just have so many features, it's a very just bad signal, just generally, just because it feels like you're trying to serve either a lot of people or you're trying to do like 100 things for one person and you're not kind of known for one thing. So I think those are kind of like the clear signals for me that an app is kind of like bad. And when I say bad, it doesn't mean it's not going to work, but it's just going to take like a crazy amount of effort to get like $1,000 a monthly revenue.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I see that a lot where it's like people try to follow like I think it's a lot of like these Asian market apps, right? Like the
Yeah.
WeChats and everything where they do everything under the sun.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of people that have never built B2C kind of think, my app needs to do like X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, ABC, like all these different things, right? But like the reality is you just want to do one thing really,
Hmm.
really well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think that's a really good indicator. It's like if you need 15 things to go well for your app to work, it's probably just a bad idea. You should probably move
Yeah.
on.
And also, actually, on that as well, like, because obviously I've been tweeting a lot more, and like, unfortunately, that some people just idiots, right? Honestly, and they will say stupid things. Like I know the best way to shut them up now, but like I would just say, hey, like, find a niche and build for that niche, and one simple kind of like feature, and then you start from there. And then someone I think replied to me today, and they were like, "Oh, well, Google didn't do that," and I'm just like, okay.
So
I was just like, wait, what? Like, what does that even kind of like? What are you trying to prove here in any way? And some people basically they use the top 0.1% and make it seem like that's the average. And the key thing, the advice that we both give is like, we're not anyone special. It's kind of like, hey, this is what the average thing to do. And then after that, then you can make up and do more stuff based on what your own data kind of like tells you. We're just trying to get you to a place where it's like, okay, cool, like a good place where you can be leveraged itself. It's the same thing where people look at Kalaya and say, let me do exactly what Kalaya. I'm like, Kalaya are playing a completely different game now itself. So instead, just get to a place where you can get some like, I don't have to do my 9 to 5. Start there, and then after you can look at the millions and see what things are like. The best way I've actually found on Twitter now to shut people up is that you don't get aggressive with them. I literally just ask them, "Hey, what app have you built? It must be this. I want to try it out." And then they
yeah.
always be silent.